July 17, 1945, Shimabara Peninsula, Kyushu, Japan. The morning fog hung over the volcanic cliffs like bloodied surgical gauze, tinted orange by the rising sun that still couldn't pierce the dense humidity. The air smelled of sea salt, mixed with sulfur from underground hot springs, an acrid odor that burned the nostrils. The silence was broken only by the distant cry of seagulls and the occasional rustling of bamboo in the southeast wind, blowing at 14 kilometers per hour. Major James Robert MacDonald, 34 years old of the 3rd Canadian Field Artillery Battery, adjusted the controls of the new SCR-584 radar system mounted in his fortified observation post. His hands, calloused by 3 years of war in Europe, moved with mechanical precision over the calibrated dials, but a vein pulsed visibly at his left temple. Sweat already stained his cotton shirt at 6:23 in the morning. Over the past 6 weeks, his battery had destroyed 23 Japanese artillery positions along the coast. Each of them was between 8 and 11 miles away, ranges that Japanese manuals from 1941 said were impossible for Allied field artillery to reach with lethal precision. But now something different. Aerial reconnaissance had identified at 4:47 a massive concentration of troops at exactly 24,112 meters away, 15.1 statute miles, hidden in a network of lava tunnels on the slope of Mount Unzen. Intercepted intelligence indicated 197 to 203 soldiers from the 312th Imperial Infantry Division, veterans of Okinawa, preparing for a nighttime suicide attack against American Navy positions in Nagasaki. What happens in the next 2 hours and 47 minutes will establish the record for the most devastating long-range field artillery engagement in the Pacific Theater, a record that remains not just until 1945, but to this day in Canadian military documentation declassified only in 2003. But more than that, it will demonstrate something that Lieutenant General Isamu Yokoyama and the entire Japanese command structure never internalized, never managed to process until the last day of the war. That Canadians didn't just have more ammunition or more men thrown against fortified positions. They had something much more dangerous: mathematics, applied physics transformed into surgical death, and an absolute cold absence of moral hesitation when the numbers said that 200 enemy lives could be erased before breakfast got cold. If you love stories not of glorious war heroes, but of men who transformed science into industrial massacre and then had to live with the memories of what technical perfection really means in terms of charred human flesh, hit subscribe, because what comes next isn't glorious. It's precise, devastating, and will show you why the soldier who pulls the trigger 15 miles away doesn't suffer less than the man who dies screaming at the target. To understand why the annihilation of 197 veteran soldiers in 8 minutes and 34 seconds represented such a tactical and psychological shock to Japanese coastal defense commanders, you need to go back to the 1930s and the forging of the military doctrine that brought them to that lava tunnel in July 1945. Japanese defense doctrine for the homeland islands, formalized in April 1945 under the codename Ketsu-go, Operation Decision, was based on 4 assumptions considered unbreakable by Tokyo's military elite. First, Allied field artillery had a maximum effective range of 18,000 meters. Any position beyond that was in a relative safety zone where only naval or air bombardment posed a threat, and both could be mitigated by deep underground fortification. Second, accuracy decreased exponentially with distance. At 10 miles, even the best American gunners would have dispersion of 200 to 300 yards, making it area fire, not precision fire. Tunnels with narrow entrances of 8 meters width would be virtually impossible to hit directly. Third, direct visual observation was necessary for precision fire. Positions on opposite mountain slopes, hidden by terrain or fog, were effectively immune until infantry advanced to direct line of sight. Fourth, ammunition cost would prohibit prolonged barrages at long distances. 88mm projectiles weighed 15 kilograms each. Transporting thousands of them across the Pacific and then firing them at targets you could barely see was logistically unsustainable for an army already fighting on 2 fronts. These assumptions weren't delusions. They were based on rational analysis of every battle from 1942 to 1944, from Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima, where these rules proved repeatedly correct. General Kuribayashi had written from Iwo Jima, in December 1944. The enemy hates close combat. Force them to come to us, and their artillery becomes irrelevant. Distance is our armor. The fortification of lava tunnels wasn't desperate improvisation. It was sophisticated military engineering based on proven successes. At Peleliu, September 1944, 10,900 Japanese in coral caves resisted for 73 days against an American force of 28,000, inflicting 10,795 casualties. Naval artillery fired 1,136 tons of explosives on the island, most exploding uselessly against solid rock or entering tunnel mouths only to have their shockwave absorbed by 90-degree angles in the internal galleries. At Iwo Jima, February to March 1945, an 18-kilometer network of tunnels allowed 21,000 defenders to inflict 26,000 American casualties before final annihilation. A 3-day preliminary bombardment by warships, the most intense of the Pacific War, had killed less than 3% of the garrison. Colonel Ikeda Masuo, chief engineer of Kyushu's defense, had declared in May 1945, in a document captured later, "Americans have steel and explosives. We have geography and patience. Each cave is a vault that will cost 50 enemy lives to open. We have 6,000 vaults." This wasn't ignorance. Japanese command possessed extensive intelligence about Allied technological developments, a network of neutral informants in Portugal and Switzerland, technical documents captured from shot-down aircraft, detailed interrogations of American prisoners with technical training, all ensured they knew about radar, about mechanical ballistic computers, about new types of long-range projectiles. They knew, for example, that Americans had developed HVRP projectiles, high-velocity armor-piercing with tungsten cores. They knew that SCR-584 radar could track targets through fog. They knew that new fire control systems allowed calculations in 45 seconds that previously took 8 minutes. What they didn't capture, what they couldn't internalize until post-war interrogations in November 1945, was the difference between having these technologies separately and integrating them into a single cohesive system operated by crews trained together for 6 months continuously. They knew radar existed. They didn't know it would be mounted 8 kilometers from the artillery battery, connected by buried field telephone cable, transmitting corrected coordinates in real time every 15 seconds during a 20-minute engagement. They knew tungsten projectiles penetrated better. They didn't know that combined with new temperature-stable propellants, they would allow muzzle velocities consistent enough for dispersion of only 12 meters at 24 kilometers, sniper rifle accuracy at heavy artillery scale. They knew Canadians were well trained. They didn't know that Major MacDonald and his crew of 23 men had fired 2,147 practice projectiles since March 1945, more than most Japanese batteries fired in 2 years of war. Japanese prepared meticulously for the wrong threat. Kyushu Command had spent 340,000 man-hours digging additional deeper tunnels, some with 90 meters of solid rock as protection. They wasted 890 tons of concrete reinforcing entrances against 500-pound bombs, when the real danger would be 88 millitons projectiles designed not to explode, but to penetrate narrowly and ricochet inside confined spaces. They trained troops to resist infantry attacks with grenades, swords, and suicide demolition charges. They didn't train to remain psychologically functional when rock walls around them began transforming into supersonic splinters, when air filled with lava dust that cut lungs, when comrades simply disappeared into red mist without ever seeing the enemy. What they should have done was simple in retrospect: maintain positions no more than 12 kilometers from any coast where Allied ships could provide immediate counter-battery, or disperse troops in groups of no more than 30, making each concentration economically unviable for prolonged barrage. But doing so would violate the very core of Ketsugo doctrine: mass defense, fanatical resistance, inflict maximum casualties to force negotiation instead of unconditional surrender. They chose to die together on principle. Canadians would give them exactly what they asked for. James Robert MacDonald was born March 14, 1911, in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, Canada. Son of Robert Thomas MacDonald, coal miner, and Catherine Ann MacLeod, elementary school teacher. He had 2 younger siblings, Thomas, born 1913, and Margaret, born 1916, The family lived in a two-story wooden house 800 meters from the entrance to mine number 12, where his father worked 10-hour shifts 6 days a week, descending 600 meters below the Atlantic Ocean seabed. James grew up hearing the mine whistle mark the town's routine, 3 long whistles at 6 a.m. 4 shift start, 2 short and 1 long at 6 p.m. for end, and the sound every miner's child feared, 5 rapid whistles followed by silence, meaning underground accident. He heard those 5 whistles on February 17, 1923. A methane explosion in the West Gallery killed 11 men. His father survived, he was in the East Gallery, but came home with hands shaking uncontrollably, smelling of smoke and fierce sweat. James, 12 years old, saw his father cry for the first time. That solidified something James already knew. He would not be a miner. He graduated high school in 1929 with mediocre grades, except in mathematics, where teachers noted an uncommon capacity for mental calculation. He wanted to be an engineer, but the Depression destroyed any possibility of university. He worked for 6 years as a clerk in a shipping company in Sydney, calculating cargo, routes, fuel costs, tedious applied mathematics that paid $14 a week. He married in 1935 to Ellen Marie Stewart, a pharmacist's daughter he'd met at a church dance. They wanted 3 children. They had one, Robert James, born April 1936, whom James would see only in stained photos until 1946. When war began in September 1939, James was 28 years old, stable job, small child. He didn't need to enlist. Father with dependents received automatic deferment. He enlisted voluntarily in October 1939. Ellen asked why, through tears at the Sydney train station. James responded with the brutal honesty that would characterize all his war correspondence. Because I'm going to spend the next 30 years calculating tons of coal for men who despise me for not going to university. Or I can try to be something more. He wanted to prove he was intelligent enough to matter. War offered that chance. The price would be higher than he imagined possible. James enlisted in Halifax on October 12, 1939, receiving serial number K47832. Basic training at Camp Aldershot, Nova Scotia, lasted 16 weeks. March, shoot, obey, don't question. He hated every minute of ritualized submission, but his 1.78-meter, 79-kilogram body adapted. Mental mathematics saved him. During a simulated artillery exercise in Week 9, instructor, Sergeant William Bull Patterson, First World War veteran with 3 fingers missing on his left hand, asked for volunteers to calculate gun elevation for a target at 4,200 yards with 1,200 mph crosswind. Other recruits leafed through ballistic tables for 4 minutes. James answered in 47 seconds. Elevation 11.3 degrees, drift 0.7 degrees right. Patterson verified with slide rule. Correct. You, he pointed at James, artillery. Rest of you, infantry. A 47-second decision determined that James would live the war doing mathematics 10 miles away instead of dying with bayonet in hand. He never decided if that was luck or disguised cowardice. Artillery specialization took an additional 6 months. Camp Petawawa, Ontario, winter 1939-40, where temperature dropped to -35 Celsius, and fingers went so numb he couldn't feel the elevation dials. Chief instructor was Captain Edmund Morris, civil engineer from Toronto who spoke about ballistics like poetry, gracefully lethal parabolas, mathematically perfect arcs of destruction. Morris taught James something crucial. You're not trying to kill men. You're solving a geometric problem that happens to have flesh at the impact point. Think that way or you won't last 3 months. First combat use was June 6, 1944. Normandy, Juno Beach, supporting Canadian infantry advance through Courseulles-sur-Mer. He fired 47 projectiles between 7:30 and 9:15, never saw a single target, just coordinates shouted by forward observer via radio. At 9:47 message came, target 23, concrete bunker neutralized, body count 14, good work. James vomited behind the gun, not from moral horror, but from sudden overwhelming realization that he had killed 14 men with the same mechanical ease as calculating shipping costs. The human body processed what the mind couldn't yet. He was extraordinarily naturally good at transforming human beings into statistics. Evolution through 13 months in Europe, incompetent and scared in Normandy, June 1944. Hands shaking so much he needed to hold dial with both hands. Adequate at Falaise Pocket, August 1944, vomiting stopped. Proficient in Holland, October 1944, promoted to lieutenant. Expert in Germany, March 1945, promoted to major. 847 recorded shots, 43 confirmed targets destroyed. When the war in Europe ended in May 1945, James was one of 12 Canadian artillery officers selected for transfer to the Pacific. Specific command: specialists in long-range precision fire. Preparation for invasion of mainland Japan, Operation Downfall, where every mile artillery could reach beyond the beach, would mean hundreds of infantry lives saved. James accepted without question. Ellen wrote a letter asking why he hadn't asked to come home. He didn't respond for 3 weeks, and when he did, he wrote only, "Because I'm too good at this to stop." July 3, 1945, Shimabara Peninsula, Japan. James received coordinates for target designated Concentration 17. Lava tunnel confirmed to be sheltering 80 to 120 enemy troops. Intelligence included a new detail. Decrypted intercept indicated the position contained wounded soldiers evacuated from Okinawa, many without combat capability, awaiting transport to hospital in Nagasaki. Orders remained: destroy enemy concentration. Wounded were still enemies. James stared at the coordinates written on sweat-stained paper for 11 minutes. His right hand trembled for the first time since August 1944. He talked with Lieutenant Harold Green, his fire control officer, smoking players' cigarettes near the command post at 2:30 p.m. Green, 23 years old, son of a pastor from Alberta. "You think they wouldn't shoot our wounded?" James: "It's not about what they would do. It's about what we become when we stop seeing the difference." Green: "I see the difference. Difference is our men are going to invade that beach in September, and those wounded will miraculously find rifles and grenades. I see it clearly." James: "And when you close your eyes at night?" Green: long pause. "I keep them open as long as I can." James fired on Concentration 17 at 3:22 p.m. 17 projectiles, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Observers reported tunnel collapse. Estimated casualties, 90 to 115. He wrote in his personal diary that night, a diary Ellen would find in 1963, 8 years after James's suicide with hunting rifle in the basement of the house in Glace Bay. "Killed men who couldn't fight back today. Command says it was necessary. Green says it saved our lives. Both are right, technically. But at night I don't dream of soldiers who shot at me. I dream of those who couldn't. I dream of wounded lying in darkness hearing mathematics descending from the sky. I dream that I'm too good at this. And I wake knowing I'll do it again tomorrow because someone has to be good at this. And God gave me talent for lethal geometry. God damn God for that. God damn me for accepting." 2 weeks later came Concentration 23. Not wounded. Elite troops. 200 of them. James didn't tremble when calculating elevation, and that's what began killing him, slowly and completely. Not that he did it, but how easily he did it. The system Canadians created to transform mathematics into surgical massacre at 15 miles distance was officially designated Integrated Long-Range Fire Control System M1945C, combining American SCR-584 radar, British Type 8417 mechanical ballistic computer, and modified Canadian M2A1 88mm guns with experimental HVAPR ammunition, high-velocity armor-piercing extended range. For engineers who designed it in National Research Council laboratories in Ottawa between January and March 1945, it was a marvel of applied physics, advanced metallurgy, and mechanical analog computation. For soldiers who would operate it under potential Japanese counter-battery fire while calculating parabolic trajectories through unpredictable wind zones, it was simply the Reaper. The projectile measured exactly 88 millimeters in diameter, size of an adult human fist, weighing 8 kilograms fully loaded. The inner core was tungsten carbide wrapped in a discarding aluminum jacket, technology borrowed from anti-tank projectiles but adapted for long-range flight. Tungsten hardness, 9.5 on the Mohs scale, harder than quartz, only marginally softer than industrial diamond. When this core hit lava rock at muzzle velocity of 1,240 meters per second, 3.6 times the speed of sound at sea level, it didn't simply penetrate. It vaporized the first 4 centimeters of impact material instantly, contact zone heating to 1,850 degrees Celsius in 0.003 seconds, temperature that melts carbon steel like butter under blowtorch. Proven penetration in testing, 340 millimeters of steel-reinforced concrete, or 90 millimeters of homogeneous tank armor, lava rock, porous and brittle compared to military concrete, offered pathetic resistance. The projectile entered making a clean 12-centimeter hole, but hydrostatic pressure from penetration created a cone of fractures radiating 60 to 80 centimeters from impact point, transforming solid rock into thousands of splinters sharp as razor blades traveling at 400 meters per second. Inside the confined space of a tunnel, say a gallery 3 meters wide by 2.5 meters high, this fragmentation cone filled the entire usable volume in 0.2 seconds. Like filling a room with nails thrown by dynamite explosion. There was no safe spot 5 meters from impact, only degrees of mutilation. The SCR-584 radar system featured a 1.8-meter parabolic antenna mounted on modified tow trailer, transmitting electromagnetic pulses at 10-centimeter wavelength, S-band, chosen specifically because fog and rain were almost transparent at this frequency. Angular precision, 0.06 degrees. In practical terms, at 24 kilometers distance, the system could distinguish 2 targets separated by only 25 meters. More accurate than the human eye, can estimate separation at 200 meters with 10x binoculars. The antenna completed a 360-degree rotation every 0.8 seconds in search mode, or locked on specific target and updated position every 0.15 seconds in tracking mode. The operator saw the target not as visual form, but as intensity peak on a green phosphorescent cathode ray tube oscilloscope screen, a peak that danced gently left or right as the target moved or remained fixed as rock, literally, when target was stationary fortified position. Heat from the cathode tube warmed the operations cabin to 32 degrees Celsius, even on a July morning. The operator, Private David Chen, 21 years old, son of Chinese immigrants from Vancouver, only man in the battery with pre-war amateur radio experience, worked in sweat-soaked undershirt, eyes 30 centimeters from screen, correcting target drift caused by Earth's rotation, altitude, wind, atmospheric density variations. Chen could track a chicken crossing a road at 8 kilometers. A tunnel full of 200 humans was like tracking an elephant in an open field. Inside a brass box measuring 60 by 40 by 30 centimeters, 47 kilograms of bronze gears, hardened steel cams, and micrometric precision shafts executed calculations that would normally require a trained officer with slide rule working for 8 minutes. Input: distance to target from radar, direction from radar, wind speed and direction from anemometer, air temperature from thermometer, barometric pressure from aneroid barometer, propellant charge temperature from thermal sensor in ammunition depot, number of shots already fired manually entered because barrel erosion changed ballistics, operator turned cranks, adjusted dials, gears rotated with the smooth click-click-click of Swiss watchmaking. After 45 seconds, 33 seconds, if operator was Corporal Michael Mick O'Brien, former Montreal watchmaker with fingers that danced over controls like a pianist, output appeared on 3 dials, barrel elevation in degrees and minutes of arc, azimuth in degrees and recommended propellant charge, normal, plus 5%, plus 10% or plus 15% for extreme ranges. There was no approximately. The machine didn't understand hesitation. It gave answer with 3 decimal places. Elevation 17.382 degrees, not 17, not about 17.4, exactly 17.382. And when crew applied exactly those numbers, projectile fell within a 12-meter diameter circle on target at 24 kilometers, 85 times more accurate than conventional 1944 artillery at same range. The gun barrel, chrome molybdenum steel, 6.8 meters long, machined with 0.02 millimeter tolerance along entire length, smooth as polished surgical glass when new. After 200 shots, barrel erosion from propellant burning reduced accuracy by 8%. After 400 shots, barrel was replaced. McDonald's battery had 3 operational guns, each with 2 spare barrels. Replacement process took 47 minutes with experienced crew working under tarp for protection against enemy observers. Hydraulic recoil mechanism absorbed 180,000 joules of recoil energy, force that would rip human arm from shoulder if someone was stupid enough to hold barrel during firing. Hydraulic brake system with dual 15-centimeter diameter cylinders dissipated that energy in 0.4 seconds. pushing barrel 90 centimeters back, then returning it smoothly to battery position. Crew felt each shot, not as explosion, they were 40 meters behind barrel when it fired, but as localized earthquake. Ground trembling, air vibrating in subsonic frequency you felt in chest more than heard, followed IRO. 3 seconds later, by the supersonic crack of projectile breaking sound barrier, sound that made ears ring for 15 minutes after 30-shot firing session. Sergeant William Bull Hawkins, crew chief, 38 years old, veteran of Ortona and Normandy, used wax-soaked cotton in ears. Even so, he would have permanent 40% hearing loss in both ears by 1948. Post-war medical records would note hearing loss induced by occupational acoustic trauma, consistent with prolonged exposure to heavy artillery without adequate protection. Permanent disability, 25%. Hawkins would say in 1967 interview for Veterans Oral History Project, "It was worth it. Better to be deaf than dead. And the sounds I lost weren't ones I wanted to keep hearing anyway." The system worked like this. First, SCR-584 radar swept horizon emitting electromagnetic pulses, like lighthouse sweeping fog, but invisible and 1,000 times faster, completing 360-degree rotation in 0.8 seconds. When pulse hit solid object, rock, construction, concentration of metallic or human mass, part of energy reflected back. Receiver measured time between transmission and return, 0.0016 seconds, meant target at 24 kilometers. Light travels 300,000 kilometers per second. Round trip equals 48 kilometers divided by 300,000 equals 0.0016 seconds. Second, Private Chen locked radar in continuous target tracking mode, keeping green cross of oscilloscope centered on return peak. His hands adjusted controls constantly, compensating for atmospheric drift. Every 15 seconds, he read coordinates from screen: azimuth 247.4 degrees, elevation 2.1 degrees, distance 24,112 meters, and shouted to Corporal O'Brien via field intercom. Third, O'Brien turned dials on ballistic computer, entering target coordinates plus environmental data. Southeast wind, 14 kilometers per hour at 30 degrees to line of fire, temperature 23 Celsius, pressure 1,013 millibars, ammunition temperature 28 Celsius, barrel erosion 187 shots, gears rotated, cams turned, and after 45 seconds, firing solution appeared. Elevation 17.382 degrees, azimuth 248.1 degrees, propellant charge plus 12%. Fourth, O'Brien shouted solution to Sergeant Hawkins supervising gun crew. Gunner Henry Walsh, 24 years old, Saskatchewan farmer, turned elevation wheel, 118 rotations for 17.382 degrees. He counted each one quietly, while loader Thomas Brennan, 22 years old, Newfoundland fisherman, inserted 11.8 kilogram projectile in breech, followed by propellant charge in green silk bag, normal charge, plus 2 supplementary 6% modules each to reach plus 12%. Fifth, Hawkins verified everything. Optical level showing gun perfectly horizontal, azimuth confirmed on magnetic compass corrected for local declination, elevation confirmed on precision inclinometer, correct charge, correct projectile, crew clear of recoil zones. Sixth, he pulled firing cord. Firing pin struck primer. Flame traveled through propellant charge in 0.008 seconds. Chamber pressure reached 3,400 bar, 50,000 pounds per square inch, pushing projectile through barrel. Acceleration, 0 to 1,240 meters per second in 6.8 meters of barrel equals 113,000 Gs average acceleration. Any organic object inside barrel would be atomic paste. Tungsten carbide projectile withstood comfortably. Total time from target identification to first shot, 2 minutes and 34 seconds for well-trained crew. Subsequent shots with target already tracked, 38 seconds between each. This wasn't visual observation by gunner looking through binoculars, veteran crew intuition estimating distance by experience, or trial and error based on where previous projectile fell. It was ballistic physics, mechanical analog computation, and radar-guided targeting transformed into precise, surgical, mathematically implacable lethality. It was science, and science has no mercy, no remorse, no moral hesitation, only accuracy. And on July 17, 1945, at 6:47 in the morning, That accuracy would be aimed at 197 men who didn't know that mathematics can kill as efficiently as bullet. July 17, 1945, 6:47 hours local time. Shimabara Peninsula, Kyushu, Japan. Temperature 24 Celsius, rising to predicted 31 Celsius by noon. Southeast wind, 14 kilometers per hour, steady. Visibility 800 meters in morning fog, hanging over volcanic slopes like wet blankets, but radar saw through it like winter clear air. Major James Robert MacDonald stood in the fortified observation post, hands clasped behind back to hide almost imperceptible tremor in fingers. He looked through narrow observation slit toward Mount Unzen slope 24,112 meters distant, so far that mountain was just bluish form in fog, indistinguishable from low cloud. He saw occasional birds. He saw bamboo swaying. He didn't see 197 human beings who would die in less than 9 minutes. Single, cold, internal thought. Just another concentration. Numbers on screen. Don't think about names, you'll never know. Canadian position. Grid 34S 428772. Semi-buried concrete fortification 400 meters from coast. Elevation 120 meters above sea level. 3 M2A1 guns positioned in triangle with 80-meter separation, each in earth revetment covered with green net camouflage. SCR 584 radar, 8 kilometers inland, connected by field telephone cable buried 60 centimeters deep. Japanese position. Natural lava tunnel on northeast slope of Mount Unzen, elevation 340 meters. Main entrance 8 meters wide, 4 meters high, oriented 287 degrees northwest. Intelligence indicated 3-level tunnel system with maximum depth of 40 meters below surface, connected by natural ventilation shafts of 1 to 2 meters diameter. Numbers. 197 soldiers confirmed by radio traffic count. Each 10-man unit had radio operator. 20 unique calls identified in last 18 hours. Multiplied by 10-3 for redundancy equals 197. Equipment. Type 38 rifles. Type 96 light machine guns. Estimated 8 to 12, Type 89 50mm light mortars, estimated 6, grenades, suicide demolition charges, personal katanas for officers. Exact distance, 24,112 meters measured by radar, confirmed by triangulation on captured 125,000 topographic map. Last intercepted communication, 6:34 a.m. Captain Takeshi Yamamoto to Battalion Command, preparations 70% complete. Evening attack as scheduled. Conditions, fog density decreasing, estimated full visibility by 8:30 a.m. Wind steady from southeast, favorable for dispersion of smoke from impacts. Barometric pressure stable, radar tracking solid, no interference. MacDonald received firing authorization at 6:39 a.m., 8 minutes to prepare. Standard procedure. He'd done this 43 times before. This would be different. At 6:47 a.m., and 12 seconds, MacDonald gave the order. Commence firing sequence, target concentration 23, full battery. Private Chen, eyes locked on oscilloscope screen, confirmed. Target locked, coordinates stable, distance 24,112 meters, azimuth 247.6 degrees. Corporal O'Brien's hands moved across computer dials. 41 seconds later, solution ready, elevation 17.421 degrees, azimuth 248.2 degrees, charge plus 11%. Sergeant Hawkins at gun number 1. Solution set. Gun ready. Same confirmation from guns 2 and 3 within 15 seconds. At exactly 6:49 a.m. and 03 seconds, MacDonald, fire. The first projectile left gun number 1 with muzzle velocity of 1,238 meters per second. The sound was a physical force, a supersonic crack that rattled teeth and compressed lungs. The gun recoiled smoothly, hydraulic system absorbing violence that would have torn steel mounts apart without it. Flight time, 47 seconds. In that 47 seconds, the projectile traveled 24,112 meters in a mathematically perfect parabola, reaching apex of 2,140 meters altitude before descending at terminal angle of 62 degrees from horizontal. Wind drift at altitude caused 4.3-meter lateral displacement, exactly compensated in firing solution. Temperature gradient caused 1.8-meter range extension, exactly compensated. Coriolis effect from Earth's rotation caused 7.1-meter drift, exactly compensated. At the target, inside the lava tunnel, Captain Takeshi Yamamoto, 31 years old, was reviewing attack plans with his 5 platoon leaders. The map spread on volcanic rock showed Nagasaki harbor positions, approach routes, timing sequences. Around them, 197 men, veterans who'd survived Okinawa when 110,000 of their comrades hadn't. They'd survived because they were smart, disciplined, and lucky. None of those things would matter in the next 8 minutes and 34 seconds. Private Kenji Tanaka, 19 years old, son of rice farmer from Niigata Prefecture, was writing letter to his mother near tunnel entrance. He'd written 14 letters since Okinawa, mailed none, kept them in waterproof pouch, planning to mail all at once when he survived. The letter read, "Mother, the tunnels here remind me of the storage cellar at home. Dark, cool, smell of earth. I feel safe here. War cannot reach us underground. We will attack tonight. I'm not afraid. Tell father I remember what he taught me about courage." He never finished that sentence. At 6:49 and 50 seconds, the first projectile hit 4.7 meters left of tunnel entrance, striking lava rock outcrop at 1,238 meters per second. The tungsten carbide core vaporized the first 4 centimeters of impact point instantly. Temperature at contact zone, 1,850 degrees Celsius. The rock didn't just shatter. It exploded into a cone of fragments traveling at 400 meters per second, thousands of razor-sharp lava splinters filling the air. Private Tanaka, 12 meters from impact, felt something hit his chest. No pain initially. He looked down and saw pencil still in his right hand, letter paper on ground, and blood spreading across his uniform shirt from 7 rock fragments embedded in his torso, the largest one 8 centimeters long, having penetrated 11 centimeters deep, severing descending aorta. He had 23 seconds of consciousness remaining. He used them trying to put fragments back into the rock, as if that would undo what just happened. His fingers couldn't grip properly. The rock fragments were slippery with his own blood. He died at 6:50 and 13 seconds, 67 meters from where his unsent letter to his mother lay, now spattered with blood and pulverized lava dust. Inside the tunnel, Captain Yamamoto heard the impact, felt the shockwave compress the air in his lungs. His first thought, he would later tell interrogators, was mortar fire. Close but not accurate. They were safe deep in the tunnel. He was catastrophically wrong. At 6:50 and 28 seconds, gun number 2 fired. Flight time, 47 seconds. At 6:50 and 49 seconds, gun number 3 fired. Flight time, 47 seconds. Private Chen called corrections based on smoke and debris cloud from first impact. Adjust right 2.3 meters, down 0.8 meters. Corporal O'Brien input corrections. New solution in 12 seconds. At 6:51 and 15 seconds, second projectile from gun 1 hit 2.1 meters right of tunnel entrance. Direct hit on the entrance itself. The mathematics of what happened next are simple. The tunnel entrance was 8 meters wide, 4 meters high. The projectile entered traveling at 1,240 meters per second, at 62-degree angle from horizontal. It struck the sloping tunnel floor 3 meters inside entrance and ricocheted, still traveling at 890 meters per second after rock impact slowed it. In confined space, ricocheting tungsten carbide projectile doesn't dissipate energy gradually. It becomes a steel-jacketed ball in a stone racquetball court, bouncing wall to ceiling to floor to wall at velocities that turn stone into shrapnel with each impact. The projectile ricocheted 4 times in 0.8 seconds, traveling 47 meters into the tunnel before final impact shattered it into 23 major fragments and several hundred smaller ones. In its path were 31 men. Sergeant Hiroshi Matsumoto, 28 years old, was the first to die, 9 meters from tunnel entrance, struck by intact projectile moving at 890 meters per second. Impact was to his upper torso. The projectile, designed to penetrate 340 millimeters of steel-reinforced concrete, went through human torso like it wasn't there. Matsumoto was dead before his body registered pain. Nervous system severed before pain signals could reach brain. His body was thrown backward 4 meters by impact, striking 3 men behind him and knocking them down. That saved their lives for approximately 3 seconds, because being on ground meant ricochet fragments passed over them instead of through them. Corporal Yuki Nakamura, 24 years old, former schoolteacher from Osaka, stood 17 meters inside tunnel, turned away from entrance, checking ammunition count in preparation for evening attack. He heard the sound, a screaming whistle growing impossibly loud, and turned his head. That movement saved his life momentarily and doomed him eventually. Turning his head meant the rock fragment from first ricochet struck his face and jaw instead of back of skull. 8-centimeter lava splinter entered through left cheek, shattered mandible, severed tongue, exited through right cheek, continuing through throat of man beside him. Nakamura remained conscious. He tried to scream, but produced only wet gurgling sound. Blood filled his destroyed mouth faster than he could spit it out. He began drowning in his own blood, a process that would take 2 minutes and 47 seconds. He spent that time on his knees, hands trying to hold his face together, watching men around him die in ways he'd never imagined possible. The projectile's second ricochet hit ceiling 23 meters inside tunnel, directly above where Captain Yamamoto stood. The impact point was volcanic rock, relatively soft, which meant instead of clean ricochet, it produced explosive fragmentation. The ceiling didn't just crack. A 2-meter section collapsed, 840 kilograms of rock dropping 2.5 meters onto the 8 men directly beneath. 5 died instantly from massive blunt force trauma. 3 survived initially, trapped beneath rock too heavy for comrades to lift without proper equipment. Private Akira Suzuki, 20 years old, was one of the 3 trapped. Rock slab across his legs from knees down. He was conscious, screaming. The rock had crushed both femurs and both tibias. His comrades tried to lift it. 4 men couldn't move it. 6 men couldn't move it. He screamed for 4 minutes and 18 seconds until blood loss caused unconsciousness. He would die 37 minutes after attack ended, still trapped, before any attempt at medical evacuation could be organized. At 6:51 and 16 seconds, projectile from Gun 2 hit 1.4 meters left of entrance. Similar effect. Ricochet into tunnel. This one traveled deeper, 63 meters, before fragmenting. At 6:51 and 36 seconds, projectile from Gun 3 hit entrance ceiling, exactly at structural weak point. The lava rock above entrance, already fractured by previous impacts, collapsed. 4.2 tons of rock sealed primary entrance completely. Inside tunnel, Captain Yamamoto finally understood. This wasn't mortar fire. This was something they hadn't prepared for, hadn't trained for, hadn't imagined possible. Artillery, precision artillery. At range where artillery shouldn't even reach, much less hit with accuracy measured in meters. He shouted orders. Everyone deeper. Secondary exit, move. 93 men, those still mobile, those not dead or dying or trapped, ran deeper into tunnel network toward secondary exit, 140 meters away, through connecting passages. They were running toward the killing zone. Private Chen tracked movement inside tunnel using radar. Mass displacement, movement of personnel. He reported, target dispersing, movement toward secondary concentration point. MacDonald consulted map, secondary exit grid reference. He calculated quickly. Distance from Gun 1 position to secondary exit, 24,089 meters, 23 meters.